I'd like to now talk about how to use a total gym as a therapeutic device for lunge training. Now, what you can do with the total gym is by adjusting the angle, you can make the lunge easier. If the total gym goes up, then it allows more support for the lunge because you get more resistance from the total gym. Also, it won't move so quickly. So let me give you an example of what I mean. If I just use good lunge technique, put one foot on the total gym trolley, then as I bend down, I can go down into the lunge and back. I can also lean forward more, so I can come back up off the back foot and put more weight. So there's a couple of ways to modify this. If I put a lot of weight on my front foot, then that creates one effect in the lunge. If I stay more on my back foot and push that forward, it puts more load on the back leg. So load the front foot, loads the front leg, load the back leg, and let the total gym trolley slide up, puts more of the emphasis on the trailing leg. Now, this is important for two reasons. One, if the load's on the front leg, then it emphasizes more of the reaching effect, and it's more of a conditioning effect for the front leg. Yet if I consciously keep the weight on my back leg, then it puts a lot more work into the hip flexors on the trailing leg. If somebody's hip flexors are overdeveloped in the lunge, then what happens is when they lunge, they tend to be pulled forward by the tightness of the hip flexors, and that basically tends to tie the lesser trochanter to the lumbar spine. So what you see in people with tight hip flexors on one side in the lunge, as they lunge, they'll be pulled toward that side. Also, it pulls the trunk forward, so from the side, they can't keep the trunk vertical. So when you look at them from the side, they're leaning forward in the lunge. So as they step into the lunge, instead of being here, they're here, and instead of being here, they're here. So you see a forward and sideward bent lunge in people with tight hip flexors. If that's the case, you do not want to emphasize the use of the back leg until you fully stretch the hip flexors out, or that will make it worse. People that short step the lunge, instead of taking a nice full lunge that activates the glute, knee should be over ankle, short stepping the lunge looks like this, which overuses the quadriceps. Those people you can train by having them put their front leg on the trolley, and they can learn to sink down deep, keep the knee over the ankle, and push out. And when they push off the trolley, they should push off the heel, okay? So that trains them to learn to feel and use the butt muscles, the hamstring muscles, and the thigh muscles, okay? Now, the benefit of the total gym for that process is because you can increase the angle, it essentially decreases how much work they have to do. As they get stronger, you lower the total gym down, and eventually they'll be strong enough to stay upright, keep good alignment, go all the way till the knee just touches the floor, come up and out. And remember, lifting the toes in the shoes, just asking them to lift the toes in the shoes, creates a functional short foot. In other words, the brain thinks the foot is shorter, so it tends to bring the body's emphasis toward the heel, which encourages glute recruitment, okay? You can experiment with that. All you got to do is push off the ground with your heel, and it fires the glutes. So these are just a couple of tips that you can use with the functional grid and the total gym. And the other thing is, you can always turn the body at different angles. So front lunge, 45 degree, and here I work in this way. And then if I want to go sideways, I can lean on to that leg, or I can stretch it out. So here the emphasis is on the standing leg versus this emphasis is on the total gym leg. And as you can see, you got to be pretty careful because the trolley moving requires a lot of stability. That's one of the benefits of it. When this thing moves, it fires off your stabilizers. The drawback is that you have to be extremely alert, because if your client goes too quick, then they can overstretch their groin, they can fall over. So remember, like they used to teach us in the military, stay alert and stay alive. So I would recommend you practice this on your own before you try it with clients, so you can get a sense of the complexity of it, how it feels, and when you know how it feels in your own body, you're more likely to be able to use it therapeutically and effectively as opposed to just taking a guess at it. Okay, Kara, come on and let's give that a try, okay? So what I'd like you to do is first remember this thing moves quite quickly, okay? So have a good sense of yourself. Put your either foot on the front there. Now I want you to not turn that back foot like that. Look down at your back foot, square that up, okay? Now as you put your weight on that, I want you to concentrate on standing on your back leg. In other words, don't transfer your weight forward. See if you can bend that back leg, and in the process, slide that trolley up. I'm going to give you just a little support till you learn the feel of that. Okay, now let your heel come off the ground on the trailing leg. Good. Good. And let that knee go down toward the floor. Okay, very good. Now, bring that knee outwards so that that's better. Feel how you're using those new muscles. Now give me a little core recruitment there. Okay? You have a tendency to forget about your core. Okay? And now work your way out of that lunge. So back up. Good. Now, from the start, activate the core, just a gentle drawing in. Do you have a pretty good idea where your uterus sits in there? Okay? So I want you to think of it like this. Think of lifting the uterus up like it's riding up on an elevator. You're going to take it up a floor on the elevator. Okay, so you see, put your finger in my belly button. Okay. Now I don't have a uterus, but I'll give you the idea here. So if that was my uterus, I'm going to draw in and lift. Do you feel how I do that? Okay. Now what happens when you do that is it actually pulls the two halves of the pelvis together, stabilizing your sacroiliac joints. And when you stabilize the sacroiliac joints, you stabilize the hip. When you stabilize the hip, you stabilize the knee. When you stabilize the SI joints, the hip and the knee, you stabilize the foot and the ankle, and that means you can play better tennis, because when the joints are stable, your brain lets you recruit a larger percentage of the motor units feeding any one muscle group in the body. So to the degree that you can improve your stability, you automatically make yourself stronger and faster without going to the gym. Isn't that cool? I think it's cool.
It's good to me.
All right. So knee outward over second toe. Bring that uterus up one level. Try not to force the posture. Let yourself be long, but without forcing it. Good. Okay. Excellent. So now go into there. And remember to let that heel come off the ground. Good. Excellent. Keep that up. Now when you do that, don't pull from the neck. Just draw from here. Okay? So if you're watching, you might have noticed that every time she draws her belly button in, she picks her head and neck up like that. That's because her brain does not have access to her transverse abdominis, which means we actually need to do some specific core recruitment work for her, because she doesn't quite know how to recruit her transverse abdominis. And if people keep doing that, they end up with tremendous neck tension. And you can see she's been stabilizing her pelvis from her neck, because her muscles up here feel like Goodyear tires or something. They're all locked up. That's because people actually try to stabilize their hip and pelvis from their neck. It's a common thing I see clinically. Okay, so now let's switch legs. Remember that trailing foot I want to be vertical, so front to back. Good. And don't forget to use the balls of the feet. So what's the first thing you're going to do before you move into the movement? Align that knee. And what about the uterus? Give it a little ride upstairs, okay? Okay, so I want you to relax there and just draw the belly button in. And a great concept is pretend you're going to put a pair of pants on that were just a little tight. How would you use your tummy to get into those tight pants? Yeah, just draw it in. Just draw it in. But see if you can do that without tightening that. Okay, let your belly go and draw in. That's better. Really put your mind on this tension that you're creating up here, okay? So try to practice that in front of the mirror. So what I would do is, for homework, is I would have her stand in front of a mirror and literally just pretend she was going to put a pair of tight pants on, and she'll draw that belly button in. She's got to train herself to draw the belly button in without hiking the shoulder up, because that's called a substitution pattern. So what happens is, if I teach her to stabilize by drawing her belly button in, but don't teach her not to do that, she might end up with slightly improved hip stability, only because general overall recruitment, but she ends up with neck problems. So after a tennis match, people like that will end up with a headache, and they won't know why. So every time they play tennis, they get a bad headache. And oftentimes they think it's something to do with their head or their nervous system. They go to medical doctors and get put on drugs for headaches when really they don't have a headache problem. They've got chronic neck tension, which leads to ischemia, which means lack of blood flow to the head, which causes headaches. These are common musculoskeletal syndromes, okay? So with those things in mind, good posture, no tension in the neck, gently draw the belly button in, knee over toes. Remember, as you come forward, go onto the balls of the feet. And I want you to think like you're reaching for a ball. So pretend you're holding the racket and reach for the ball and keep all those things intact. Now, just put that knee out and touch my finger. There you go, and let it go. And bring it out. Okay, you see how you're using those muscles now? So she needs just to be cued. She has to be reminded how to turn these muscles on. Okay, excellent. Now, before I conclude this clip, I would like to make a point. If you don't get rid of any source of inflammation, be it in the abdominal organs, the sex organs, any of the organs below the diaphragm that are inflamed can shut down these muscles because of the reflex relationships. Also, if there's pain in or around the sacroiliac joint or the pubic symphysis or the hip joint itself or the knee joint and even the foot and ankle joint, any one of those points of pain can actually create the kind of mechanical disorders you see here. So, two things have to be looked at. You cannot just do the exercise without removing the pain, or you're wasting time. Pain is a far more powerful reprogrammer of the nervous system than any therapeutic agent known to man. So the first thing you got to do is do the necessary stretches, assessments, joint mobilizations, and include the necessary dietary modifications, which you can learn about in my book, How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy. And then, while you're doing that, work on these exercises. But if you find that she's not able, or your client's not able to incorporate the motor changes you're trying to induce, it usually means that the body has not yet come to the point where the inflammation is under control.